Hello everybody and welcome back to yet another workshop project. In today's episode, we're going to be making a shooting board, but not your typical shooting board, because this one has an extra feature that's just going to take it that extra step further. So let's get going. Okay, so those of you that are new to this whole woodworking malarkey may have no idea what a shooting board is, which is fine. I'll explain that to you now, and then I'll explain why my one is different. So a shooting board's primary function is to plane end grain square, because if you've tried to do this, you'll know how much of a challenge it is to one, get it square, and two, do it without getting breakout on the far side. A shooting board will stop that. And the way it works is like this. You have the material flat on the bench, which means the plane needs to go there. Now we need to elevate it in order to lift it off that little lip at the bottom of the mouth of the plane there. So obviously it needs to go on a platform of some kind. Now this is fine, but by doing that, you haven't stopped the problem of breakout on the far side, which means you need to have some sort of fence on the back supporting it, which is perfectly square to the edge here. That combination, when it's all clamped down of course, will allow you to plane end grain square without any breakout and with minimal difficulty. And that is a shooting board in its simplest form. It really doesn't have to be more complicated than that, even though I'm about to go against what I just said in this video, but never mind. Now, if you want to know how to construct one of these, I've already done a video on that. Link is in the top corner as well as in the description on how to construct one of these in 1 minute with like pretty much that and a couple of clamps. That's all you need in order to plane end grain square without breakout. So have a look at that if you're struggling with it. Now, let's get into the problems with a traditional shooting board design and what I'm doing to change it. Now, I primarily work with timbers ranging anywhere from 6 to about 18 millimeters thick. And when you're planing the end grain of these, you're only using one section of the blade here. This section is not being used at all. Now this is okay because this is a low angle jack plane, which is amazing on a shooting board and can be used for lots of other tasks. But I purchased this, a shooting plane that is made for this task, yet even when I'm using it on a shooting board, I'm still only using that section of the blade and the rest of this is completely unused. And that's the same even if I go down to a 6mm thick component, and even if I go up to like a 25mm component, I never really use that section of the blade. And the obvious outcome of this is that the bottom half of the plane blade gets blunt quicker than the top half, whereas if I was able to use the entire blade, I would be able to go for longer between sharpenings and it would keep me away from this station, which to be honest I will do anything to try and do. And as far as I could see, I had four options when it came to designing this shooting board in order to use the entire plane blade. And all four of those options involve some sort of ramp. If we're looking at the material from the end grain, like this, the first option that I came up with was, right, let's get the end grain sitting flat as it would be on any shooting board, but we will plane like this. So the plane is shooting up across the timber and is therefore creating a shear cut that will use the entire width of the blade. However, in that instance, I sort of thought that actually that might, because the plane is traveling up in this direction, we might get a little bit of breakout on that top edge because it's unsupported. The other thing with this design is that the plane is traveling up against gravity while doing the cut, so it's going to provide more resistance when actually using the shooting board. So that option, rubbish, we didn't like it. The second option was, okay, maybe not ramp the plane, but let's ramp the material instead. So I thought, let's angle the material up like this, and then we'll plane across it that way, like that. Again, using the entire width of the plane blade, and the material underneath is not going to break out because it will be supported from underneath. The problem with this being that I'm having to push the material up against the back wall on an upward slope, so it's not going to be the most comfortable thing to use. So then that moves on to the third option, which brings us back to this whole material flat kind of thing, so like that. But instead of the plane traveling up, it travels on a down slope like that, using the entire width of the blade of course, and the material is supported from underneath, and you also have gravity working in your favor, which is ideal. But I think that when you push the plane, the fact you're having to drag it up a slope Yes, you've got gravity working for you while you're doing the cut, but then have to drag it back up. I think it's just not gonna be comfortable when doing lots of shooting. So it's a really good idea that, but I don't think it was quite gonna work. Also, it would mean that the shooting board has to be pretty thick, as it would with this one, in order to accommodate the ramp for the shooting plane. So that led on to the fourth option, which was, let's go back to angling the material, but let's angle it down instead, with the plane traveling across it like that. Now this is good. The material is locked in place by gravity into a fence and the supporting thing underneath. And you haven't got gravity acting on the plane. It's just resting on a flat surface, which is going to be an anti-friction surface, and it should glide through that cut really easily. Like this design up here, where we potentially may get breakout on top, that might happen, but on my shooting plane, the blade is sort of angled down, so I don't think that's going to happen too much. So that is the option we're going to go for. The material is going to be angled down and the plane is going to be traveling flat across that material. Now there were a few technical difficulties to work out with this, the main one being how much to actually ramp that material, because it's all very well putting a steep ramp on this, which would be ideal for planing small components like this, where you get maximum shearing action, you get maximum use of the entire blade. But if I was to then try and swap that material for something thicker, then you can see that if it was back here on this side, then there's no way for that blade to be able to plane the end grain here. So I had to find a happy medium of how much to ramp this material in order to accommodate the various thicknesses and widths of timber that I usually work with. So I enlisted the help of my good old friend Google SketchUp in order to work this out, and it was nice and simple really. All I had to do was make an assumption about what width of timber and what thickness of timber I'm likely to work with in the future, and this was the maximum amount, may I add, and I made a gauge that the maximum I'm likely to cut is probably about 350 millimeters wide and about 25 millimeters thick. Anything more than that and the miter saw is definitely going to come out for it. So that was my gauge for it, and then all I had to do was angle the ramp correctly so that it matched with the 60 millimeter protrusion coming from the track that the plane was due to run on. And that was it really. Now I've made a shooting board that is scaled to my work, and if you guys want to make something like this yourself, it's pretty easy to do. Okay, so quick sit rep on where we are. Got the platform for the plane to run across, we've got the platform for the fence to sit on, and we've got the ramps for the bed to sit on as well. Now this is the only bit of material I had that was the correct thickness, and it's a bit too short, but I've got nothing left and I can't be bothered to go to the timber merchant and purchase more, so I'm going to stick with this. What I'm going to do is shift it about 12 millimeters away from where the fence will be, which will give me a sort of gap between the two, so that any dust and debris can fall down there without throwing off the component that's going to be sitting on here and therefore making it out a square. So that was something I was intentionally going to do anyway, but I'm just making that gap slightly bigger to accommodate. As for the other side, these ramps, I'm just going to sort of angle those, and I think it'll finish off the back of the shooting board quite nicely. And it's not like I actually need that ramp there, because by the time I put the plane on here, like, I'm not going to be planing anything that wide because the plane just wobbles by that point. Most likely I'll be planing from about there onwards if I'm to use this for the maximum capacity. So I think that's all fine. And I've also been toying with how to join these bits to the ramp above. And I think I want to keep it as a metal-free fixing. You know, I could just screw this in from above and a bit of glue and I'd be done with it. But I think I'm going to domino it instead. The reason is, I know at some point in the future I'm going to add a 45-degree fence to this surface so that I can shoot miters as well. And if there's any screws in there, then there's potential that I might accidentally drill into one of them, or it will be in the exact position where I want to drill a hole. So if I keep it as metal free and then just use dominoes, I can always screw into those later. Okay, so I've got the ramp glued up and flushed off and sanded on the sides as well, so they're feeling super smooth now. I love birch plywood. It's just so nice. So now I want to attach this anti-friction material, and I'm probably just going to do this with double-sided tape because over that length this will be fine, and it saves me mixing up loads of epoxy, getting it everywhere, and ruining or potentially ruining the lovely crisp clean look of this due to my carelessness when applying glue. So let's get that cut to size. I feel like I'm doing 5 jobs at once here at the moment. So now, this big block that I've been gluing together, this is made up of 3 laminates of plywood that are 15mm thick, which has made it 35 overall. And this is going to be the back fence of the shooting board. But one thing I need to do to it is obviously match the angle of the slope that I've got on the ramp and angle one face of this, or the front face of it, back 5 degrees, which is the angle of the slope. and I'm going to be doing that on the planer. So to begin with, I'm going to get this planed flat and thickness underneath, and then I'm going to cut it to size and everything like that. And then once I've done that, I will be tilting the fence on this to 5 degrees in order to plane that slope. Now, when planing slopes on planers, in this case, it would be possible to make this side out of parallel to the back face, because this one is going to be the one that's sloped. But because that planer fence isn't referencing off this side, I might end up taking off more here than here and thus get a sort of tapered angled fence, which wouldn't be ideal. Hence why I'm getting it square to start with. I'm actually going to rough cut that angle on there on the bandsaw first, and then I'll finish it off with the planer. Hopefully, given the fact it's going to have minimal contact with the planer, means that it should stay pretty parallel. And yes, it is possible to put plywood over the planer, but I would advise doing it on the back of the cutting block, because the glue between each of these layers is very abrasive, and doing it here is going to dull the cutters quite quickly. Now, I have tungsten carbide in here, so it's probably not going to be too much of an issue, but by doing it on the back, especially if you're working with high-speed steel knives, it is preferable. I can also hear a lot of you saying, is it okay to plane plywood on a planer? Yes, it's fine, but do not do the faces, only plane the edges of plywood. If you plane the faces, then I guess you've got a chance of it delaminating while pushing it over, and then it might get caught, and I mean, apart from anything, it will look absolutely minging, but just stick to the edges if you're gonna put these over a planer or jointer. Okay, so I managed to get that fence over the planer in one pass, which is lovely because it means that this is most likely going to be parallel over its length. Now, I want to install this offcut of low friction material in the side of this ramp, which will prevent the plane from cutting into the ramp to start with, and it will also help it glide a lot easier when I'm putting sideways force into the side of the shooting board. The problem with this at the moment is that this material is 6mm thick, and the bottom of the ramp just down here is 6mm high. So if I cut a groove in there, then it's obviously going to start cutting through to the top. So I'm going to cut a 4mm sliver off the edge of this and then install that in the side of here sideways. So then I only need a 4mm channel, and it will give me 2mm at the top here. And then once that's installed, I guess I can fix the ramp down then. There's not a lot more to do on it by that point. Just going in that way. So I need a line at the bottom of where this strip is going to be marked onto the side of this material. So if I just shift that out of the way, marking gauge on the side here, drop it down to hit the plywood, and then I should be able to scratch that setting from underneath here. And that, lovely, yes, that should be the correct height, or exactly where that anti-friction material is. I'm also going to scratch this setting on another bit of plywood so that I can use this as my testing material to ensure we're cutting at the right place. So first I'm going to get the depth of the cutter sorted, and then after I've established that, I will start worrying about the offset in order to match up with this marking gauge line that I've scratched on here. Okay, I think I've sussed it. It's bang on the line, and in terms of depth, it's poking out about, I don't know, 0.5 millimeter from the surface, which is all it needs. And yeah, it's time to do the actual thing now. So the cutter was just a tad too small, and as you can see, that top layer is just starting to deflect when I push this in. So I'm going to take a few shavings off this top edge and clean it up, because it's looking pretty rough anyway. So I'll do that, and then we'll get it fitted all the way along and glued in place. So now that I was content that it was square over a 200mm length, I then wanted to focus on making a sacrificial sliding fence kind of thing that would be able to slide up and provide a new fresh fence once the previous one had deteriorated. And I decided to make this out of oak because obviously it's very strong and hard and it's perfect for this kind of thing, and also the oak matches the drill press table I made previously. So then, like, you know, all my shop appliances kind of linked together and it looks pretty cool that way. Everything's nice and uniform. The oak also had some nice medullary rays running through it and was pretty much the last piece of this board that I had left. And you can probably see the little gap at the bottom of the fence, which, as I said earlier, I intentionally put in there so no dust or debris or anything would knock the piece out of square. It would be like a little gutter for all of that to fall down and then not cause any hassle in the future. So once I got that sacrificial fence attached with double-sided tape, I then took the fence off with the sacrificial part still attached and then put that on the drill press table and then drilled out the area for the mounting bolts. Now that the fence was attached and working beautifully, I could then turn my attention to making the track for the plane to run in. Now this was going to be made of the same low friction material that the base of the track was made from. However, this was also going to have a little right angle cut out of it as well to prevent the plane from tipping during use. I want that right angle to lock over the edge of the shooting plane and kind of hold it down into the track below. So firstly, I cut it to size on the bandsaw and then was able to clean up that rough sawn edge using my jointer plane, and then I buzzed it over the router table to take out a small rebate to hook over the edge of the plane. And after adjusting the rebate cutter on a test piece of material multiple times to get a perfect fit, it then came to my attention when I was slotting it over the edge of that shooting plane, it was slightly ramping up because the inside of the plane was not parallel to the base of the plane, which kind of defeated the object of this hook. And also the casting on the inside of the plane wasn't flat either. There was also a tiny bump over its length. Now this isn't a manufacturing error or anything like that, because at the end of the day the inside of that plane doesn't need to be flat or anything like that. It's just got to look nice, and it was just in this instance that I needed that area to be flat, square, straight, whatever you want to call it, and it wasn't. So that needed some addressing, and I got a milling machine recently and I thought to myself, what could go wrong? we go. Ramped shooting board complete. It's looking good. I'm very happy with this, but most importantly, I don't know why I've taken this off, because we need to see if it's actually cutting square. So here you go, we'll do this all in one take. I've got a little bit of poplar here. This has been cut square on the miter saw, so I'll take a few skims with the shooting plane, and if it's out of square, then it's going to put this component out of square as well. So hopefully it's going to be all good. Well, I can say for certain it's a lot easier having that angled fence, because I'm not having to focus as much on pushing this back. It's kind of just holding itself there. That's really nice. Anyway, let's have a look. Spot on, I think you'll agree. Yes, that one's spot on as well. Oh, that's such a relief. That is such a relief. And do you know what? I'm so happy to finally get this project out of the way, because as a lot of you know, I've been focusing a lot on this workshop since probably September. I've been building workbenches, I've been sorting out my extractor, I've been buying machines, I've been making drill press tables, I've been doing all sorts of things, building this workshop and bringing it up to scratch so that I can start doing some proper woodworking projects again. So some of you have missed the memo on this. I think a lot of you have missed the memo on this. I haven't really been too public about it, but I'm going to be starting an online school, and this online school is going to be for free. There's going to be no membership or anything like that. You just go onto my website, click the online school button, and there you go. There's all the tutorials in front of you. We'll be going from tool sharpening to setup to use, and then we'll be doing some projects, starting off with a dovetailed box, and then a cabinet, and then a toolbox, and then a curved front side table. It's all going to be in an order that's easily digestible, easy to navigate, and it's definitely going to take your woodworking to the next level. So don't miss out on that. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook in order to get those notifications as to when that school is going to be live. Those of you watching this video in the future, it'll probably already be live, so there'll be a link to it in the description if you're interested. But this was the final hurdle that needed to get done before I was able to start getting stuck into those projects again. And oh, it's a relief. It's a relief. So as always, guys, thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, don't forget to press the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.